What's happening, everyone? My partner's Ian's keeping it real. What's happening, everyone, and welcome to El Chile Boxing Talk. Got the homies Sean Gringo Hicks up in the house. Got Nopal Buxianos, and we got a very special guest, George, from Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA. You can find him. We're going to drop his link. And man, he's been with us for a little while in the chat. And on top of that, too, he likes the controversial rescore segment. He's going to get that rolling himself here in a little bit. So we invited him on to give us his take on the fight that we did this week. And we just want his take on everything here. So he's here with us for the whole show. We're happy to have him. Run PMC's out. And we got George filling in. So let's start off with the weekend recap. Joe Smith retains his 175-pound title against Stefan Gerard, who was a late replacement, but it was a 9th round TKO. And then afterwards, of course, the mic was in his face, and he's somewhere around Canelo's division. So he got asked questions about what he wants to do next at 175, what he wants to do next as far as maybe possibly fighting Canelo. So, Sean, what'd you think about this fight, bro? Like, what's your take on Joe Smith in general versus the other 175-pounders and his overall outlook on what he wants to do next?
Well, yeah, I think he had a really good performance. He looked good for what it was. I know a lot of boxers have actually commented and shared with me that replacements can actually be more tricky and dangerous, especially one that has a competent corner and one that's had success in the past. But Joe Smith did what he had to do. He put it on him. I know like the 4th round that he had got caught and showed some vulnerability, but overall, I mean, he's able to make the needed adjustments. I think he's also gotten a lot better as far as his countering his defense overall. I kind of felt like before, when I say before, when he fought Bivol, I thought when he fought Bivol it was kind of one-dimensional, honestly, and I think he has made a lot of adjustments, and he's become more of a well-rounded boxer and for what he does, and he still can definitely crack. He's a dangerous fighter. As far as like the guys at 175 that are officially at 175, I would still put him below Arturo Beterbiev. I still have Bivol ranked higher, and I actually think Zurdo would beat him as well. But there's no shame in that. I mean, I love all those guys. In fact, my dream that I'll share with you guys, if it's not too weird, is that that's the division Canelo will get in and unify that division. That's where the party's at. And also to add to my dream, to make it even more weird for you guys, I would love, because he can't make the scale anyway, David Benavidez, if he moves up there, then that's my boxing dream come true. So let's make it happen. That's how I feel about it. And does he deserve to fight? I think so, but I would love for him to fight those other guys first.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, man. He definitely looked like he made some adjustments there compared to his last fights, especially against the one against Beterbiev. I know he's been wanting that one back, especially I think it might have been the 11th or 12th round where he thought he could have had him out or had him in trouble had he had some more time in that round. I mean, yeah, exactly, in that round against Beterbiev. But the fight we're talking about is what he just did this weekend. I graded him pretty well, and yes, especially when you get a late replacement, it could be very tricky because if you're one to study, go back to look at old film, is there enough film on him? We've seen what happened to Joshua against Ruiz. He was like a less than a month replacement, and nobody expected that to happen. But Joe Smith, he did what he was supposed to. He got hit a couple of times. I thought if Gifford actually maybe stepped it up a little bit, it would have been a little bit more competitive. But I just think like Joe Smith, he's got like that thudding power, making him think a little bit before actually coming into attack. And I'm with you too, Sean. I would put him at the bottom of those guys, but it's not in any disrespect whatsoever because I mean he looks really good. Jab, he's pretty. I'm not gonna say basic, but he's pretty boxing 101 as far as your basic skills. Good jab, good right hand. You saw some good defense, some good countering. It would be interesting to see him against Zurdo, especially Zurdo's last fight where he was getting hit a lot. And I think Smith maybe would give him a good fight, but again, I would put him there at the bottom. Again, no disrespect to that because I think Smith is a really good fighter.
Not at all, man.
I think that that Bivol fight where he lost really helped him see that he had a lot of limitations. Bivol basically played him like a flute. And then with this fight, I mean, I know the opponent wasn't totally
Oh yeah, dude. I definitely agree. I think he's right where you guys have him too. Like that's where I'd put him. On top of that too, like I do think of him as like a working man, and I like Joe Smith Jr. I do think he's just like, you know, a boxing 101 type guy, but I do think he has some skills. Like, you know, I know that Tim Bradley was kind of giving him a hard time for like, you know, trying to outbox Steven Gerrard. But I mean, like, well, if you have an actual live fight going on and, you know, the guy is beneath you a bit, or, you know, you can handle him, like, why not work on your boxing skills? That's what some of the best fighters do. You know, they try to actively improve their boxing skills. Like, I don't think you should be bashed for that, especially if he has the fight in control. Like that type of fighting is going to be way better than any type of good sparring he could get. You know, so especially because, you know, yeah, Gerrard, he did have some skill that he was able to show, and so it was a different look. So yeah, if he wants to work on some boxing skills, I mean, we've seen Canelo do that over the years, and it's like I don't know why it's necessarily a sin that Joe Smith works on his boxing. He's trying to improve. He said he's trying to improve. One of the other things that I really liked about him, besides his power and everything else that you mentioned, is like I feel like he can close the range really well. Like it seems like he's far away from an opponent, and he could just come and hit you real quick. Like it was amazing the way he could just like close the distance on somebody. Like and he's also good at trying to mislead you about that. That's one of the things I noticed. Like sometimes he would kind of trick his opponent into thinking that maybe I'm a bit far away. Nope, boom, get to him right away. So I think that's definitely a skill. I think that the only person who could take away from that would be Bivol, like he did the first time. Like, although I do think Joe Smith did make some improvements, I think Bivol could just kind of backfoot it a little bit again, or be slick enough to not let himself necessarily get hit like that. But I think Better Beef would be actually that would be a great fight. Better Beef versus Joe Smith. I mean, those would be just two guys going at each other. And Joe Smith's kind of slow in general, but like he doesn't take a while to take off, in my opinion. Like I think that his pace is going to start a bit early. So, I mean, that could lead to some fireworks. And it would be very enjoyable. So I'm happy for him. You know, sky's the limit for him. Does anybody have anything else before we move on?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go, Sean.
I was going to say real quick. That's what stood out to me before when he lost, he was one dimensional, and that's what stood out. Like the footwork that Bradley was giving him a hard time for, I think is a lot better. Like he was able to go on his back foot, and like what I like, he's got that shark mentality. When he smells blood in the water, like when Gerrard was getting on the ropes, that was a wrap, man. Like that's when Joe Smith would really crank it up, and that's what I like to see as a fight fan. Like he knows how to go for a finish, and he knows what he needs to work on, but at the same time, he definitely loves his strengths, and he got a lot better at cutting the ring off. To me, like a lot. I think from each fight, you can see the improvement where he's cutting it off a lot more aggressively, and he's able to get in his position to take control and get off his combinations. Sorry, George. Go ahead.
No, yes, I'm sorry. I said Better Beef earlier, but you're right. It was Bivol. Yeah, my fault about that. Yeah, dude, it would. I would say yes, exactly like you said. The footwork, and Tim Bradley. He's
Tim Bradley.
Mr. Tim Bradley Jr. Joe Smith, I thought he did really well, man. It was good to see that. And he does resonate with, I'm a blue collar guy myself, so I work like in the mines. So I could definitely resonate with him, going to work, putting that hard hat on, that work vest and working hard. So like that resonates to a lot of people that view him that way. They kind of see themselves cheering for him because of that. And I like Joe Smith.
Yep. Actually, I think there's no shame in, hey, I get their names wrong all the time, George. I mean, I get my name wrong, so don't worry about that. My name changes within the show.
Yeah.
But what I'll say is that for me, and this is going to sound crazy, and I'll probably get kicked off the show, Nepal, please don't kick me off, but I actually feel better about Joe Smith versus Beterbiev versus Bivol. I think Bivol presents way more problems, and I think he's more of a mismatch. Even though the power and Beterbiev is a monster, like an unleashed beast, but I think success would more align better for Joe Smith style-wise to me. Not talent, but style-wise.
Yeah, you're right, because Bivol actually moves really well. He does got some good footwork as well, and you see that in his last fight. And that's something I was explaining to my buddy. He was like, he doesn't really have a lot of power, but he's got some pop, and I really love the way he moves back and forth. Like, he's good footwork. He knows his distance, and jab is key, man. It would be a very interesting fight for him, and I think matched up against Beterbiev, that would be a little bit better for him.
Yeah,
even though,
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, man. So that's my 2 cents. And also, too, I think that I know Zordo, he really, really, as he should, wants that Bivol fight, but there's nothing wrong with little Joe Smith, man. I sign me up for that, man, any day of the week.
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah. I want to give a shout out to a couple people in the chat. We got the Texan in the house. Good to see you, man, as well as Rider of the Storm. Welcome, man. And dude, let's move on to our next topic. It's something that we didn't have a chance to touch on next week, but it looks like Terence Crawford and Top Rank are getting into litigation together. So I guess the business relationship does continue on some level. And there's allegations that Terence Crawford is not getting paid what he should. Also allegations towards Top Rank, or Bob Arum more specifically, that there might be some racism involved. So I just wanted to know what your guys' take was on that real quick. Sean, what do you think about all this?
Well, first of all, being a person that unfortunately had to acquire lawyer support multiple times within my life, sometimes multiple lawyers at the same time, lawyers will tell you straight up how it is. They're not going to take their case unless they think they can win, right? And also, they want to make sure that you have the funds to be able to pay them. They want to just take some, pro bono case. So they know the funds are there. So we know that part as far as, because Terence Crawford, even though he feels he's getting underpaid, he's way more paid than most of us out there. So the funds are there, but they have to know what there's some meat on the bone and some substance from that standpoint. Now, do I necessarily believe that there is something? I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I don't know that standpoint of the case. I know people are posting clips and different things on social media of what, Bob Arum not probably putting himself in the best light of things he probably would regret as far as like his opinion and saying some kind of, outlandish things in regards that could be taken offensive one way or the other. But in regards of business, one way or the other, your job as a promoter is to promote the fighter to get and retain, the fight and make the most money from it. So I don't see the benefit from it from the standpoint of a businessman to shoot, to cut your nose off to spite your face. Like, your job is to promote the guy. Like, I know he's also made a comment too, as far as like could have had a house in Beverly Hills, which I'm sure he's regretting that now too. But at the same time, he's, was that anything to do with racism, or the fact that he feels like maybe the fighter should be doing more on their own to promote themselves? And from the standpoint of racism, I just think that Top Rank just kind of has a challenge with just promoting fighters overall in general to me. That's not just racism. I think it's just in general, because several fighters have they're good as far as starting people off. Another thing that Top Rank does with Bob Arum is obviously they have the ESPN Disney machine behind them, but at the same time, it's like they pick and choose certain fighters and they can bring you up. But as far as carrying you on throughout your career, they're not necessarily the best platform or best option. Regardless, case in point, we're just talking about Joe Smith right now. They weren't talking about this fight at all, right? I mean, we were, but they weren't. And so you would think that would be a fight that'd be all over, if there was any issues as far as racism. So it's not that. And I think one thing that, I'll just go ahead and say from my perspective, because my brothers brought up on, Hopper brought up on another show that, let's be honest, a lot of the biggest market in the U.S. is Mexican-based fight fans, right? Latino fight fans are the backbone, especially Mexican fight fans. So when you have them as far as being more promoted or seemingly put more toward the forefront, is because their fan base, that's what they want to see. They know that's going to get the return that they want. Is it right? Maybe not, but it's business. And at the end of the day, it's the business of trying to get, a return on your investment, the ROI. So you want to get the most for your money. And, people can, oh, well, he's a fighter. He just needs to fight. At the same time, you do need to promote yourself. So it does kind of go both ways. But as far as like to the original point, I do think that there may be something, not that I've necessarily seen, because I've never talked to Bob Arum about anything about what he's done or hasn't done, right? But I do know from outside looking in, they do promote not everybody that great, to be honest. I think that overall they could just do an overhaul as far as like how they promote the fights. So I think like if they look at it, there could be some things that could definitely be reevaluated. Case in point, I know it's apples and oranges, but some of the moves they have are questionable. Like you have Xander Zayas, and they had him, but instead they put Nico Walsh Ali on the main card over. I'm not even a businessman. I don't need no Ivy League, degree to tell me that was a dumbass move. So some of the things they do has nothing to do with race. They're just not good decisions, right? They're just not good moves. And I'm, like I said, does he have a case? I'm sure he feels upset in a certain type of way. But from my experience and what I know, just in basic terms, lawyers don't take cases unless they think they can win. Even if they're just a low-life ambulance chaser, they're not going to take a case unless they think there's something. And if he has something documented that he can verify, like he was supposed to get so many mentions in his social media or so many commercials that are supposed to be output, something that has measure, like how can you measure the success of what's supposed to be done? Then that's a different conversation. But again, that's just my opinion on the outside looking in, not knowing all the facts.
Yeah, I agree with you. We just spoke about this a little while ago that I don't think if Crawford had anything, I don't think a lawyer would have jumped on it or at least represent Crawford. So I think there is something there that can be brought, to court. And racism, that's a tough word, man, because especially nowadays, I mean, it is thrown out there a lot, and you do see it, whether you agree with some of the stuff that's happening or not. But it's a touchy subject. And yes, Bob Arum, Top Rank, they have done some pretty questionable things. Just kind of off head. I remember not exactly what happened, but Rigondeaux was, one of those guys where he pretty much called him also a boring fighter. I'm going to say maybe Manny Pacquiao. I think there was an issue where it was like a weigh-in. I think it was I don't remember who it was, but I just lost my train of thought. But no, man, it's a tough subject, and I go back and forth with people as well, and I hate to discuss it because you go back and forth. Some people say, "Oh, it's the fighter's problem that should be promoting the fight," but then on my end, I think it's obviously Bob Arum. Like Crawford's job, I think, is obviously to fight, train, blood, sweat, and tears. He's sparring. He's the one that's putting the hours, the road work. He's the one that has to deal with all the pain, and for him to have to for them to put more on his table. I mean, on his plate, as far as him promoting himself. I mean, I think that's what you have a promoter there is to promote and to help you gain the traction you need. And as far as like personality, Arum's come out to say, I guess he's really not easy to talk to, or he's not someone that he feels he can promote better. But I don't think it should be based on personality. I think it's based off skill, and just look at what Crawford has done. The record shows for itself. Someone mentioned that he has like 9 knockouts as a champion and defending, and the only guy right now that's doing that. So, and it wasn't like he was fighting nobodies. He's fighting some champions, former champions, guys that are ranked, one to champion to 1 or 2. It's a tough subject, man. I definitely hate to try to pinpoint racism. I will say for sure that it seems like there is some kind of negligence, or he's been neglected somehow. Broken promises. He was supposed to be promised Earl Spence after the Kavalauskas, and then he actually fought Kavalauskas on COVID, and at the time it wasn't like Spence was injured. Spence was pretty healthy and ready to go if that fight was to be made. So whatever agenda Bob Arum has or Top Rank has against Crawford, it's pretty shitty, because Crawford is doing what he's supposed to. He's doing his job, and that's winning. and in spectacular fashion knockouts. He gives you exciting fights, even if you see him hurt or not. But he gives exciting fights, man. He definitely gives the fights the fans want to see. And I think that's pretty much what I have to say about that, man. I just don't like to try to speculate. I do believe Crawford maybe has something there, especially if a lawyer is willing to take the case on.
Yep.
My initial reaction was this, and I made a mistake to just react about the racial part, and that might have kind of blinded some of my friends to thinking that, I didn't believe that Bob Arum owed him money somehow, but I totally always from the start believed that Bob Arum somehow found a loophole to not pay him what he owed him. And by that, I mean that I believe that they, without even reading the contracts or none of that, I believe that they had signed some kind of contract to if they couldn't get him a fight, they got to pay him anyway, something like that. You know what I mean? That I believe that they had on their new deal. It was like Crawford had worked his way up with, being undisputed and all that. He had worked his way up into having certain privileges, like, hey, you got to get me 2 fights at least a year. And if you don't get them, that you still got to pay me. You know what I mean? Because it's not my fault that you're not getting them. But of course, we saw COVID happen and all that. And of course, the promoters were going to try to use that as an excuse. Hey, whatever they call, I forget, force majeure or whatever, they use that same stuff with Canelo. You know what I mean? The same excuse to not get him fights, you know? And of course, Bob Arum was being kind of like the opportunistic businessman that he is. Of course, he was going to try to use the same excuse or whatever. And as far as that, I believe that Bob Arum did owe him money. But with the racial aspect being brought out, I really didn't believe any of the racist parts, because I think everybody's got a position to play. I think Mayweather also had the same problem, but I believe that Mayweather was kind of jealous of Oscar De La Hoya, and he wanted the same treatment as Oscar De La Hoya. But in reality, I mean, how do you compete with a story like Oscar De La Hoya's and going to the Olympics, mom dying and all that? That's what made Oscar popular. And Mayweather wasn't going to get that, you know what I mean? No matter how much he tried, because the public had taken an interest to Oscar De La Hoya. So as far as Mayweather, he was never going to get that sort of treatment. And it took Mayweather, quitting the company and finding somebody to take an active interest in him, in Al Heyman, and telling Mayweather how to promote himself. I even saw Mayweather in an interview say that, his job was to be an entertainer, and to sell himself to the public, basically. And I felt like Crawford never did anything like that. He felt like, and he's got some right to feel that way, of course. You know what I mean? Because he is right. He has a lot of accolades. He did a lot of stuff in his boxing career. So that should be enough to be able to, be a mega star. But in this point in time, it sadly isn't, and I wanted to bring like different examples to the table of guys that are promoted, because I feel like this would help us see that, going forward, in these last years that Crawford has left, he's going to have to think outside the box and, and actually do some of these things, or be willing to work with the promoters a little more. In this case, I feel like it was kind of Crawford's duty to try to take it into his own hands, even when he was under Bob Arum, and try to say that, here, okay, Bob, I'll take a little less, but I want more fights. And, what we're going to do is I'm going to take less, but in the long run, I'm going to make more, but I'm going to be more active. So I'll take 4 fights like Triple G used to. I guess when nobody wanted to fight, suppose he wanted to fight Triple G, he was fighting like 3 or 4 times a year. And that brought him a lot of popularity, and it put him in a position to get a fight like the Canelo, because who else was Canelo going to fight that was going to bring him all that pay-per-view? I mean, there was only one Chavez Jr., you know what I mean? So the next guy in line was logically Triple G. But then you also look at Tank Davis' situation. I mean, clearly, when you look at Tank Davis, I mean, you can see that the guy is letting his promoters do all the work, and you can also tell that he probably takes less money than a lot of other boxers. But because basically, I believe that a lot of the money that's being generated there is being put back into promoting him into events. You know what I mean? And then we also have the other example, young Devin Haney. That guy, you know, he started most of his career. He kind of got all the slack that he built and momentum. He went to TJ and basically built up a good starting resume. You know what I mean? A good pro resume, and then he also important move that he did is to become a promoter. You know what I mean? He signed up for a promoter's license. So right there, you can see that he had a total interest in taking his career into his own hands. That's Devin Haney. I mean, he became the youngest promoter, and then also he was lucky enough to sign with a company like the Zone that all they wanted is good boxers, and they were willing to pay him good. And he was at the right place in the right time and signed with them. So those are like 3 examples of different things. And he doesn't have to just follow one plan, but what he can do is take into consideration that if he does a little bit of what these guys have done, dude, sky's the limit to how much money a guy like Terence Crawford can make. It just in my opinion, and I might not know anything, but you know, I think that it would serve him well to, you know, follow these examples a little bit, and you know, because he doesn't got much time left. And I'll let anybody else talk now.
Great stuff, no Paul, man. Great points that you made right there. The only thing I was going to say is just from the business standpoint, his lawyers definitely, when I say Terence Crawford's lawyer is going to definitely have a big hurdle to overcome. Because for me, since it is about a contract in essence, like if you take the racial component out of it, why did Terence Crawford resign with Top Rank in 2018? I mean, that was recent. You know, he had options, and the stuff that he's primarily claiming, from what I do hear, is prior to 2018. So you had all this stuff in front of you. Why'd you resign? So if your option is that, well, there was no other options, then that to me defeats the purpose of the case, right? So anyway, it'll be interesting. I mean, I don't really I'm not one to watch court TV, but I mean, we'll see how it plays out. But you know, I'll be glad when he gets back in the ring.
And Sean, I wanted to say that, you know, in reality, when you look at a guy like Bob Arum, I mean, we all know he's basically like a Donald Trump of boxing. You know what I mean? With the exception that he's not actually Anglo-American. He's just basically a Jewish guy. You know what I mean? Which gives him a little bit of slack to go ahead and say whatever he says, you know, because he could always use that excuse, you know, well, I'm not even, you know what I mean, because of his background or whatever. He gets a little bit of slack. But, you know, knowing that, I mean, you kind of decided to resign with the guy, knowing that he's, according to you, has racial bias and all that. It's like they still managed to put down something to entice you to resign again. So, you know.
Yeah, that to me just a big hurdle to overcome. I mean, if the crux of your case is that, you know, you were treated unfairly, but you saw no other options, then what are we doing here? You know, and I'm not a judge. I'm not a Judge Judy. I'm not a Judge nobody. You know, that's just my 2 cents on that. And it's unfortunate it got to that point. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'd like to give a shout out to D-Style Boxing El Capitan in the house. A-Rod is here with us. What's up, A-Rod? We also got Nando Llamas. Nando, thanks for being here, brother. We're happy to have you. All right, well, let's talk about this next subject. You know, and we touched a little bit about this last week, just talking about the style matchup, but it looks like it's getting closer. So I want to know what you guys think. Looks like Oscar Valdez versus Shakur Stevenson will be official, possibly in April, at the very end of April, leading into the Canelo Cinco de Mayo fight. I mean, that would be one hell of a fight to have, and I'm excited for it, and it's something that we should all want. And I want to know what you guys think. Like, we had a little bit of a take, but now that it's real, I want to know what you all think. George, let's start with you, man. Like, what do you think about this fight in particular? Like, how, you know, and just so you all know, George, he's got a great mind for the sweet science, and so I'd like to know what you think. And then after that, you know, we'll all just go in on what we think.
it's I mean, not to talk about the last subject, but I know some people were saying, well, perfect timing, right, with the Terence Crawford issue, and then here's a tweet that there's a possible fight between Shakur and Valdez. But as far as this fight being made, man, this is probably, to me, in my eyes, is like the closest 50-50, maybe 60-40. I would lean a little bit towards Shakur with this. And Valdez is actually from my hometown over here in Tucson, just north of Nogales, where his hometown is. We seen him here at the Del Sol. It was crazy there, man. And that was with the whole controversy of the Fetterman thing. But this fight, it's a good start for like the first quarter of 2022. It's definitely a good start for the first quarter of 2022. Geez, man, I there's not much I could really say besides that it's a fight I think everybody wanted. I know that they were mapping him out to either fight Navarrete next, and then Shakur would have possibly fought Burchelt, but I don't know if Burchelt's with Top Rank anymore. I'm not too sure. Maybe I've heard that he got dropped or he's not with Top Rank anymore. But I mean, what can you ask for? You got two of the best guys at that division, Oscar Valdez versus Shakur Stevenson.
Stylistically, how do you see this fight? Like, how do you see them matching up, man? What are your thoughts?
And you're right. You know, it's Shakur from the outside, good jab, good footwork. Valdez, he knows how to get him. He knows how to work himself to get on the inside, good jab, feints, head movement, bobbing and weaving. It's going to be pretty interesting. I think it'll be a chess match, maybe the first couple rounds, and then whoever makes like the first mistake, I think that'll be where the fight actually goes, where the fight will go. But it's a good stylistic as far as Shakur being from the fighting from the outside and Valdez being an inside fighter. He's got good body work. We've seen Shakur, he did get hit with a couple good shots by Herring later on, but I just think it was a little too late. So that's what I think as far as like the styles of the two guys.
What do you think, Nopal?
Man, I don't even want to say anything on this one, man, for real. But I gotta keep it honest, brothers. I give Shakur a 70% chance to win. What I see here is basically genetics and talent versus experience and willpower. That's about it. And you know, Valdez does have a little bit of power, but you know what I mean? I think people are over exaggerating on how much power he has. He hit Burchelt with a good shot, and Burchelt just came in with that momentum. So I mean, he has power, but I don't think it's as much as people are claiming that he has power in each hand. He can knock you out with either the left or the right. Man, I don't know about that. But Shakur, I mean, he's known to win fights, and you know, basically he wins every round. He's got great punch placement, and you know, he hits you from all kinds of angles. So, you know, I'm still gonna roll with Valdez, but you know, as far as like I said, the projection right now, I'm saying it's like a 70-30, man. I give Shakur a 70% chance to win, and I hope nobody's disappointed in me, but that's the way I see this one.
I am Nopal. I'm severely disappointed in you.
Man, you better stay on code, Nopal. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I got to say, like, I agree with both you guys. Like, I stylistically, George, I see what you're seeing as well. The one thing that I'll say about Shakur Stevenson, and this is one of my homies, What Rep It said, and I agree with it, is that, you know, the story's still out on Shakur Stevenson, his foot game. Like, I feel like it truly hasn't been tested yet. But I also think just Valdez in general has a problem getting on the inside. And it's like, he's short. He doesn't have that much of a reach, especially compared to Shakur Stevenson. Like, I think he's going to have trouble getting on the inside. I said last week, and, you know, maybe I was just piping off a little bit, but I said, I don't think Valdez has a chance. And I still kind of think he has a very little chance. Like, I don't want to say no chance, but like, I just think stylistically Shakur is just better than he is. He's just got more tools. I think Valdez has a ceiling that we've already seen. Like, I think it's possible that in his last fight against Montequia that he was a bit distracted. I mean, justifiably so, right? So maybe that wasn't his best version, but you know, against Burchelt, like, even though some people thought that, Burchelt was going to win and he was the favorite, at least stylistically it benefited Valdez because we all looked forward to that fight because it was going to be a war. Shakur is not going to make this a war. You know, he's going to do everything he does. He's going to use his range. You know, he's going to bait Valdez on the inside. And then all he has to do, and you know what? I've seen Shakur use his strength. He seems physically strong to me. Like, all he's got to do is tie up Valdez. Valdez, if you look in that Montequia fight, he gets tied up and he's just like helpless. He doesn't know how to fight. He doesn't know how to get out. I think he has stamina issues for being a 130 pounder. Like he throws like selectively and he doesn't even connect all the time. He fights like he's Canelo at 130 pounds. Like, he needs to be more active, in my opinion. I don't think he has the stamina to keep up with Shakur Stevenson, and I think he might get fatigued. You know, as to why this fight's being made, it's being made because, hell, you know, that's what great fighters do. They should go up and they should challenge people. I'm proud of Valdez and Shakur, both of them, you know, for getting together and choosing to take this fight on, man. So it should be great. But I just have to say that I see Shakur Stevenson, and I'll break this down a little bit more as we get closer. Like, I just see Shakur Stevenson dominating this, unless, of course, you know, there's something that, you know, we don't see that, you know, the great Eddie Reynoso might see, you know what I mean? And, but you know what? I'll say this though. Shakur has one hell of a corner too. I like that combo of his grandfather and that one gentleman. They seem real smooth. And I mean, obviously, you know, Shakur's getting great corner work. On top of that too, you know, he's getting great sparring when he goes down to Omaha, and just getting some knowledge from Terence Bud Crawford as well. So, I am looking forward to the fight. This is what champions should be doing.
No, absolutely, man. I'm absolutely looking forward to the fight. Initially, when I saw that they were announced that there was a possibility that they're close to finalizing the deal, and when I hear that, I'm hoping that they're pretty much just you know, going to go back and forth as far as like the gate revenue in regards to you know, the A side, B side stuff, which, you know, we fight fans don't necessarily care about, but that should be pretty straightforward when it comes to a fight like this. Because to me, ironically, what we were talking about in the previous conversation, I think they've always, like, the first fight that came out the bubble was Shakur Stevenson. I think they've always been trying to push Shakur from pretty much Jump Street. I've always felt that way. But as far as the fight, since we're going to go with percentages, I like that when Napoles brought that up there. I'll say I'm actually 60-40. What I've learned is that you guys brought up all the intangibles, all of the physical attributes that are going to lead to the advantage of Shakur Stevenson, and for good reason. But I do think that the intangibles, I still feel more comfortable from the body work of what I've seen of Oscar Valdez, and I actually lean to his corner to pull out a miracle, right? And I think that he's going to show a lot more, and we're going to see the best version of him, because he wants this fight too. If this fight does come to fruition and happen. So I say 60-40. I think he does have a chance. I do think that his power is in the right range. Like, it's not overwhelming, but it's enough to get some attention, to keep the respect. And I think he actually will get a chance to be able to get on the inside. And that's when I think we have a fight. And I think he will get on the inside. And I think that will be the possible difference to make it an entertaining fight. We can break it down, obviously, once it gets actually confirmed. But I also learned too that every time, and I'm not going to do it with you guys either. Every time that I doubt Oscar Valdez, he pulls up, you know, he pulls the magic out of his hat. You know, like he pulls up the upset. I mean, nobody that I know, well, you know, G Funky, but that doesn't count. Thought that Oscar Valdez was going to beat Burchelt, right? So, and he did, right? So I think that, you know, stylistically, that was a better matchup for him as far as a war. But I think a lot of those war attributes and that, you know, ability for him to have those intangibles and for him to be able to get on the inside, that's the thing. If he can figure out how to get in the inside, then I think we really, really have a fight. All right. So I know that's a little woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I think he'll figure it out. And I think that's going to show, and it's going to bring out the best Shakur too. And that's the best for fight, man. You know, young guys going at it and putting everything on the line. So I'm excited. I really do hope it happens. And yeah, 60-40. You heard it here.
Hey, Gringo, as far as that, I wanted to just tell everybody, man, you know, I had a conversation with G Funky about that, and I was the one that convinced him with that Valdez was gonna win. So you know what I mean? I hear everybody saying, I hear everybody trying to say that G Funky was the only one. Well, I was too. You know what I mean? I was, you know, but I just didn't blow that out of proportion too much. But,
dude, and you know what? I think Run PMC picked Valdez too, man. So I mean, we just don't talk about it every 10 seconds. You know what I'm saying? Let's go to the next. Oh, we got Philly Irish Drew Evo in the house. What's up, man? He says that he thinks Shakur wins this one. Hey, bro, we're in agreement. Good to see you here, brother. All right, man. Well, you know what?
Oh,
I think it's
hey, I wanted to add one more thing, man. I'm hearing rumors that well, I'm making up the rumors, by the way. That Canelo's going to work the corner for this one, so we'll see if that happens.
For
man.
Shakur? No.
Yeah, for that. Yeah, for Valdez.
That would be
Shakur,
insane.
man.
Yeah.
That would be.
That would be insane. That would definitely get the ratings up, if nothing else. You know, either
Would
corner.
that give him a 1% chance? Because I mean, when you look at Canelo when he's watching the fights of his stablemates, he's kind of always standing up and he's like trying to tell him how to punch the guy from the from the audience. So you know what I mean? I've been thinking for a while, what if this guy one day worked the corner and he's telling his guy that in the corner, you know?
No, I don't know if you made that up or not, but I mean, I hope there's some truth to it. That would be awesome. And that is something that I've noticed before. Anytime Canelo's there, he's definitely not just there for making an appearance. He makes his presence known. So man, I'm excited for this one. You know, I think there's definitely some reason to get excited about this fight. I can't wait for them to actually confirm it and not to tease us. And I'll say this too, like I know they were talking about the Navarrete fight for Oscar Valdez. If for whatever reason, I'm knock on wood, half man, half disappointment. I got to put it out there. Like if this fight doesn't happen, there's nothing wrong with Oscar Valdez Navarrete, man. Sign me up for that too. You know,
man. So, I was hoping to see that before this fight right here, man. For reals.
No, but
like
here's the thing, though, Paul. If that happens, then I think you kind of hate Oscar Valdez because for him to fight Navarrete, then to fight Shakur, he would die. I think he would die. That's too much, brother. That's a lot.
Yeah, that is true. It is a lot, huh? Because you don't know how he'll come out of the Navarrete fight.
Yeah, Navarrete is relentless, man. It's like the other guy's got like 2 gas tanks.
Yeah, exactly, and one in the back. So with all that, I mean, talk about a 2022. If he fights Navarrete, then Shakur Stevenson, he deserves whatever his purse is. That's crazy, you know.
Yeah,
and that's possibility.
And it probably had to do more with negotiation, right? Because now that you bring it up, Gringo, it probably went to the negotiating table, and then Valdez was probably, well, who can I get paid more with? And then they were like, well, you'll get more money with Shakur. All right, fuck it, I'll take that because you never know. He might take more damage for sure. With even though sometimes you win a fight, sometimes you take a lot of damage in that fight. So that's a good point, Gringo.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for saying that and putting it on the air. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you on record real quick before we get to our next topic. Since you gave the percentage, which I like that aspect of you. If they did make that fight, Oscar Valdez versus Navarrete, percentage of that one right now, real quick. No notes, just off the top of your head, man. No, Paul. Who wins that fight? What's the percentage for Oscar Valdez?
Man, it'll be a slight edge to Valdez, 55-45.
What?
And that's only because wouldn't Navarrete would be going up in weight, wouldn't he be?
Yeah, from 126 to 130. Yeah.
So it's just a slight advantage to Valdez, 55-45, because I don't know what would happen truly. It could go one way, it could go the other. I mean, if one guy got knocked out, I wouldn't be surprised if either guy got knocked out. So, that's what it would be with that one, in my opinion. Right now, yeah.
Appreciate it, sir. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but you stepped up. You're the man. That's how you do it. No Paul in the house, in case you're wondering.
That's right, man.
Yeah,
Paul's one of our other
and I can
guns.
do that since, according to A-Rod Boxel El Chijo, I'm not Mexican anymore, so I can do that.
Oh, card revoked.
Oh man, that's a whole touchy subject these days.
All
right, Philly Irish Drew said, "Hey man, he's the only one who picked Valdez in the round that he got the KO." And see, I mean, so we got another guy who picked Valdez. Like it's not unheard of that people pick Valdez. And I do, you know what? I do think that Philly Irish dude, he always got a good opinion. If y'all want to, catch him on the shoe shine, he has great opinions. He calls upsets, and he's got a good eye for things, and he gives underdogs a little bit more of a chance. And sometimes, even if the underdog doesn't win, like in the end, we'll see what he's seeing. You know what I mean? So very good breakdown. And dude, we'll get you on next week. We have some specific topics that we're going to next, bro. But if you want to join us next week, man, please
and I
let me
wanted
know.
to say, Chicano, if you guys think that I talk a lot of stuff, Philly Irish takes it to another level. So, it'll be a treat if we could have him on one of these days.
Oh, yeah. Philly Irish is my favorite Canelo hater. All right. And we got JC in the house. JC, what's happening? Pound for pound boxing real news. Thanks for joining us, bro. He says if Shakur beats Valdez, he's on the pound for pound list for sure, man. Definitely agree with that, dude. So Yeah, dude, we'll go on to our next topic, and it's something that we've been wanting to talk about, and we're happy to discuss, man, is Cuban boxing, man. It's kind of been a subject that's just been kind of floating around, and there's some up and coming prospects coming up that are good Cubans. You talk about Ugas, he's a champ now. On top of that, we've been scoring fights with Lara. So, we wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about the Cuban style and Cuban boxing in general. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of information before we go, in case you might not know. The Cuban boxing school, there's a bit of an island ceiling. Okay. So, communist Cuba forbids individuals benefiting financially above any other. Okay. So that prevents any of their standout amateurs from turning professional. Also, if a Cuban boxer wants to go pro, he must risk defecting and leaving Cuba for good, and possibly leaving his friends and family behind on that island because they might not be able to go back. So, I mean, it's a huge risk, right? Total amateur excellence with Cuban boxing. Cuba is the only country to have 2 3-time Olympic champions, Teofilo Stevenson and Felix Savon. And then Cuba lies second on the all-time medals table for boxing at the Olympic Games at 73. Only the United States has more medals at 114. And then just to put that in a little bit of context for you, they say the population of Cuba could fit in the state of Ohio. So it's just a very small island that just has quality amateur boxing. Their programs must be very good, and they're doing very well, but there's a bit of a ceiling as far as staying on the island. So we don't get a chance to truly see like some of the greats come out of there for a lot of reasons. And before we actually go into the style itself, I just wanted to see if anybody had any comments on these subjects in particular before we go into the style itself. George, what do you think about all this?
And you see it, man. I was actually reading a little bit about Joel Casamayor and how he said he'd rather die than actually fight for Cuba under Fidel Castro. So it's pretty harsh, man, actually, to see how it's broken down that way. And these guys, they make their sacrifice. Like Gamboa, I think he went years without seeing his family and his kids, and it's crazy. And then you got Rolly Romero, his dad's Cuban, and I know he still has his Cuban background. It's pretty crazy, man. I don't know. I didn't read too much about it, but just the stuff you see here, you could definitely see why the Cuban fighters, when they do come over here, like they give it their all, and they put their all into everything that they do.
Nopal, what do you think, brother? There's so many things that go into this topic right here, man. Lot of ways to look at this. I think that all in all, the Cuban professional fighters have it really hard, mentally and physically also, but more mentally, I believe, because it's a lot to take in. I mean, you got to swim across the ocean or whatever to go, and come to the U.S. and there's a lot of things that you're gonna see in the U.S. that you didn't see in Cuba, basically. And it's easily to come over here and get distracted, and because they probably literally don't have much in Cuba. So when they come over here to the U.S., they have different ways at looking at things. So when they look at pro boxing, sometimes it gets derailed with other things they want, you know what I mean? Because they want to experience the American freedom and all the things that we get to enjoy over here. So a lot of them don't necessarily look at boxing the same as they would over there. You could say that the better years of their life, they probably spent it in the amateur system over there. That's when they really took it to a competitive level, because that was their purpose back then. But now their purpose has become to live their life and enjoy it, over here. So they only use boxing as a tool to give them the money that they need to enjoy whatever, whatever comforts they want out of life. So you can see that, they come over here and not necessarily, they don't look at boxing like, hey, I want to be the best professional boxer in the world. I believe that it gets derailed with, hey, I want to just do what I got to do to, make a good ass life for myself, have some kids, and enjoy life. So I look at that, and also when they go into pro boxing, I don't think that they have a big nationalistic market for the Cuban boxers. So it's a lot different. A lot would have to go into building a Cuban boxer and giving them the same attention that they do, the American boxers or whatever. I mean, a lot would have to go into the personal story of that boxer, and you got to get the public to really have sympathy for him and everything. And as far as the Cuban boxing thing, I kind of get pissed off a little bit when people use that type of terminology, even with us. The Mexican style. What does that even mean? You know what I mean? Not all fighters fight the same way. I mean, just as when you sit there and if you take 100 people, they don't all have the same stance the way they walk. You know what I mean? Some people walk bow-legged. Some people walk with their feet straight. Some people walk different ways. So that's the same thing with fighting styles. I mean, people gravitate towards the style that is closer to the way they naturally move. So with that thing, it's kind of like for a person to go out of their way and say, "Hey, I love the Mexican style," or "I love the Cuban style." I mean, there isn't a book that tells you this is the way you have to do it. No, there's different ways to do stuff. And I mean, for example, we just saw a fight with Yunieski Gonzalez, who, you know what I mean, I really thought that guy is a cool boxer, you know what I mean? And he showed a lot of emotion after his loss to Zurdo, and I thought, you know what I mean, when you look at his footwork, the lady was actually the commentator. She was actually saying that they call the guy Trosco or something, which means that he's clumsy. You know what I mean? And that's for being a Cuban, supposedly, And also you have Yuriorkis Gamboa. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of style. So I think people get wrapped up in trying to call, trying to just say like Lara is the best example of a Cuban style. I think that people need to get out of that. And, I believe that, the best example, I guess the best way to put it is they just believe that most Cubans still have their amateur style of boxing,
Yeah, I want to say, I think it's a shame that as far as like, the Cubans not being able to turn professional, I mean, that's obviously a shame for boxing. Like we would all benefit from having more superstars possibly come out of a very talented island, obviously a very talented island. And I could see too, why, some people just choose not to defect. I mean, that's a big decision. I was reading an article by Yorkis Gamboa, and he was kind of saying, well, when he defected, he didn't really intend to, but all at the same time, he was kind of like a star on the island, but he couldn't even afford to give his kids gifts for their birthdays. And it's like, it didn't really make any sense to him, so he had to defect. I mean, so it's a big decision, but I mean, if you're over there and you don't know any different, right? And, shoot, by the time you're like, 18, 19, 20, you might have like a little Cuban mamacita. You might have some kids by then. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's a big risk. You got a lot of factors. I mean, do you want to leave your extended family behind? Like, that's a lot to ask, so I think that's a bit of a shame. You know what I mean? That it's like that for them, and as far as the Cuban style itself goes, this is what I've gathered. So we rescored the Joel Casamayor versus Jose Armando Santa Cruz fight. We're going to get into that in a second. We're going to keep it Cuban for the rest of the episode here. But this is what I gathered. The first three descriptions are how Emmanuel Stewart had classified the Cuban style when we watched that fight. He said crafty, slides in and out after getting points, and then looking to win a decision more so than by a knockout. And then typically speaking, Cubans are known to be southpaw. A lot of them are even inverted southpaws. David Morrell is an inverted southpaw. And then some other descriptions that I found that I thought were accurate towards what people think of as Cuban style is defensive minded and precise. Gringo, what do you think about all this, man?
No, I think it's great. And I love the topic. I think it's important for us to touch on it because it's one that has to be addressed. It's a big part of boxing, community culture. It's something that gets thrown out there all the time. And I have to be honest that I see it as a positive when people say, the Cuban style. I think one that's fundamentally sound, that is going to be defensive minded and crafty, as you pointed out there with your slide. But I also think of where I think the negative connotation comes in. The point of their mindset they have that they carry over from the amateur background is to win. So they're not necessarily looking to entertain or to win anybody over as far as some spectacular risky move. They're trying to win by hit and not get hit. And a lot of times that can be taken as quote unquote boring, so that's the thing that, the Cuban style can kind of be allocated towards fighters that aren't necessarily exciting. I mean, I think Ugas is exciting as hell. I think, other than his last fight, Rigondeaux has been exciting. There's a lot of fights that Rigondeaux's had that I've liked. There's a lot that I haven't liked. I'm not gonna lie, but it's not like, you know, he personifies a style that's just not maybe for everyone, but you have to appreciate the style and the just overall skill level. And to me, that's something to be revered. And there's a reason why they're fighting that way, because it's effective. It gets them wins. Now, it has been counterproductive from the standpoint of getting them to be more marketable, and that's been a challenge for them. And that's why they have to do so much more to win. And I think that's also part of the reason why I've liked from what I've seen early from Morel. He's taken more risks. He's been more aggressive. He's taking more chances. That more what I call professional style, you know, going out there and trying to get the win in a spectacular style. And Ugas as well. I think Ugas is entertaining as hell. He's fundamentally sound, and he's going to stick to his strategy. And also, when I think Cuban style, I also think a lot of feints too. I notice when they fight, they'll be fainting like crazy, like they're about to pass out feints, you know, like they have like multiple different feints. You know, I saw a recent interview, ironically, with Rolly Romero's senior, and he was talking about that when he would go in the gym, when he was training, he was a 3-time national champion in Cuba, that they would go in the gym and work on one thing. They would go in the gym and not even hit anybody, not even hit the bag. They would just work on like feints for hours. They'll work on shadow boxing for hours, you know, just you know, those key fundamentals I think is great, and I think is needed. And styles make fights. So if you have the same style, everybody has the same styles, it's gonna lose the excitement, the intrigue, and just the chess match that we all love. So I love it, and I think it should be embraced, not pushed away.
I agree with you, Gringo, that it should be admired. I mean, it's the sweet science, right? Hit, don't get hit. I mean, you have your aggressive fighters, and when you have somebody of the of the Cuban style, we should say, it makes a very interesting fight. Like, I don't just watch boxing to watch people get hit in the face. Like, I watch everything, you know, from the footwork, how sometimes they could just you know, make a difference even without throwing the punches, just all in the footwork, the jabs, the feints. And you're right, the feints are cool. Right now, Ugas, I think he looks like he's kind of like a Cuban style fighter evolved. So you could see some things that he does, obviously Cuban, where, you know, he gets in, he gets out real good. He knows his distance, good right hands, which is going to be a very interesting fight to see against Earl Spence. I think Earl Spence's footwork is a little, I don't know, for me, my opinion, his footwork is a little bit questionable. Right. And I think that Ugas would actually present some kind of a style that would give him a little trouble, especially, you know, the Cuban style boxing. Ugas, Luis Ortiz, like you said, Morale, you could see that there's like a little bit of evolving, and maybe they hear, you know, everybody talking, oh, well, the Cuban style is boring, so maybe they want to be more marketable. And Morale is already marketable. He's got some power, man. He's got some pop.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, think about it. This guy's pretty much like 6 fights in his career, and he already did Network Fox, you know, main event card, you know, so that's something that, you know, 5-10 years ago would not have happened, you know. So like you said, I love the word you said, George, evolving. I do think it's evolving. As we look at this picture of Raleigh up there, the ultimate evolving of Cuban boxing. That brother is he's definitely got his own style, but that's good. That's what you want. You want it to be a multiple facet of different, you know, fighters and how they approach. You want to have the fundamentals, but how do they utilize them? How do they gain people to get excited about the fight? So, you know, so I think it's great. So evolving, you have to evolve. If you stay the same, you're never going to improve.
Yeah, I think it's a transition from amateur to pro boxing. And for me, the biggest thing would be to get, you know, if some Cubans could come over here when they're a little younger, and, you know, they can easily more transition into the, you know, get established a little in their personal lives or whatever. But that would allow them to have a better transition into the pros, and, you know, evolve their style, just like you said that Ugas has. You know, that was a great example, by the way.
Oh yeah, dude. I also think that the Cuban style benefits when it's evolved, and because a lot of people tend to think that, like, I mean, if you had to personify, like, if I could classify like one boxer as the Cuban style, like, I'd have to say it'd be Honest Larry Lara, in my opinion. Like, I think Lara is kind of what I think about when I think people describe Cuban style. But it's like Nopal said earlier. I mean, there's no specific style, right? I mean, there's just a lot of good fundamentals. And as far as it being like a boring style, like part of me does resonate with that a little bit, only in the sense that, in this idea of getting in and out of range, I think that when a boxer is out of range, I think they're avoiding their defensive responsibility. Now, I do think that a person can reset. They should get out and reset, but we're there ultimately to see engagement. And if you do it for an extended period of time, well, then ultimately you're putting yourself at risk, because we are here to be entertained. We're here to see a battle. So some people might not like that style. Like, we went back and we rescored Canelo versus Trout, Canelo versus Lara. And we all kind of agreed that, the Canelo-Lara fight was kind of a stinker, right? And then on top of that too, Lara and Trout fought each other, and nobody ever said, oh man, you got to go back that one. It's like a stylistic matchup stream. Nobody gets a hard on about that fight, right? So it's like, I don't know, like, to me, like, if it's evolved style, or if you're in the pocket, like, man, if somebody's outboxing you and outclassing you, and, we talked about this before, Sean, like, I mean, and who is better than Pernell Whitaker? But Pernell Whitaker has a much better style than the Cuban style, right? He knows how to fight on the inside. He knows how to fight in range on the back foot. And when he knows how to fight on the front foot when it's opportunistic for him, when he wants to do it. It has to be the back and forth. If you just go and pot shot your way and you think you're going to be one shot ahead, and I'm kind of describing Lara a little bit. Like I said, I think that Ugas does have an evolved style, which is good. When I see David Morrell, who everybody's excited about, I do think David Morrell has a lot of skill. He doesn't class, like, in my mind, like, I don't think of him as like, oh, that's the Cuban style. Like, he's very exciting, and he's aggressive, so, but he is the inverted southpaw, and he is Cuban. And, I like, I like talent wherever it comes from, but I mean, to me, it's not necessarily like the most appealing thing when I see somebody pot shotting their way to a victory, or making it ugly because they're just concerned about the win. Like, we're going to get into this Casamayor fight in a little while, but I mean, dude, like, the commentary, and, maybe not rightly so, like, I kind of wasn't too happy with the way they were talking about it, but they lost interest in that fight. They were talking about how boring Casamayor was, and, he was clinching, like, it's not that entertaining all the time. Like, some of their best fights are, at least in the modern era, we're going to get into some history here, like, they're just not that entertaining to me. But if somebody is applauding it, I think that's great. Like, if you like it, that's great. But I think there's a bit of a ceiling for that. On top of that too, this dynamic that the Cuban style teaches their fighters, like, I think it could limit some potential superstars that could come out and they're not winning because they don't know how to do that in and out range, pot shot type defense, cagey, although, like I said, those are great fundamentals to have in general. Don't get me wrong. But, like, you could have somebody that could have, like, the skill set of, like, perhaps like a Canelo, right, early on, who might not necessarily be able to win amateur fights, but has power, but is getting outpointed, right, gets frustrated and just goes, okay, well, I'm done with this. And there's nothing that kind of leads them on towards being great. So those are just some of my thoughts on it. So let's open up. Does anybody have anything else to say about the Cuban style?
I just wanted to say that it's a shame that we have to put Edislani Lara up there and just say that that's the poster child for Cuban boxing. He's not, bro. I mean, these guys got some exciting fighters. Like I said, I mean, even Yorkis Gamboa, before they figured out how to beat him, I mean, that dude was a straight warrior. He was socking dudes up from all angles, and he was fighting the pocket and all that. Even the guy, like I said, that Yunieski Gonzalez, I mean, that dude was a straight warrior. He had Zurdo hurt up in there, and also Rolly. I mean, that dude, he's got a lot of power, and he we don't. I don't think we should get into that where we just say that the Cuban style is boring. You know what I mean? Because it's not, and Lara doesn't represent all the Cubans. And
Right.
as far as Pernell Whitaker, rest in peace. But he also, he had some fights that were pretty boring his damn self. So, you know what I mean? We can't. I wouldn't compare it to him either. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And Gamboa, when he was in the prime of his highlights, he was kind of considered like a Mike Tyson, right? Just getting in there, hooks, getting hit, giving it as well. So you wouldn't want to label him obviously the Cuban style, but I think what Chicano's trying to say, I guess, as far as like Lara, when you actually think of current Cuban fighters, like, I guess that's what everybody refers to.
Yeah,
as Lara.
and I agree with that. I think that everybody,
I think so. Yeah,
everybody thinks the same way. Basically, but it's just a shame that it has to be like that.
Yep. I definitely agree with that. And I love the you bringing up Gamboa, because I know. I'll go and say it. Like I know when I was going to see Terence Crawford versus Gamboa, and I was watching with one of my neighbors, and he was like, "Oh man, that guy's Cuban." Like he couldn't believe it. Like that guy's a Cuban fighter. Like he said it in disbelief. Like I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" Like no, because he's exciting. So so people thought this not just today, man. They've thinking this for a while.
Yep.
A lot of people thought Mikey Garcia ducked him. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of angles that support that theory.
I'll get you kind of started.
Oh man, dude, I'm
for
off
it,
it, dude. The Mikey Garcia fanboys, they're done. They don't even acknowledge him anymore. So I'm over it. It's okay. He's the past, Besides, now he's throwing fights. You see, you're getting me started, Gringo. I'm trying not to get started, and you're triggering me, man.
Off topic.
That worked out well. Good job, me. Shout out to me. Now,
but you know what, dude? I liked Rigo in his prime, man. Like when he that everybody had that meme of him running in his last fight, but like when he was up against Donaire, I mean, like the guy was a master, total defensive master. I mean, when you can't touch a guy and he's in range, and Nonito Donaire, like in his prime, like that guy could move. He could get to fighters. Like if you could like disable Nonito Donaire in his prime, like you're impressive,
Yeah. No, well said. Yeah. I've referenced that fight before because I saw some of the comments like, why would you say him? Of course, I'm not going to mention the fight they had Casamayor. That was hot garbage. But like the Nonito Donaire, when Donaire was in his prime, you know what I mean? That was an unbelievable performance. At Radio City Music Hall, I remember like all the lights, like that was actually supposed to be Donaire's coming out party. Like he's going to go to the next level as a superstar. And he was totally just shut down and shut out by Rigondeaux. So that's always stuck with me forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was Rigondeaux's like best performance of his career, man. It was like you said, Donaire's coming out party, even though he did knock out Vic Darchinyan, and I think that's what started him because Darchinyan was starching everybody early too, and look what he did. He took away his strengths. I think to me that was Rigo's. That was like his best fight, and you didn't quote unquote see the running. He was in the pocket. He was making a miss. He was doing everything that you just put up. That the typical Cuban style fighting, and precision in and out. Don't get hit. I think he didn't drop Donaire like twice maybe, or once.
Definitely once.
It was definitely once. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I thought Rigo went down? Did he go down or no?
Maybe early.
I think they both went down. And that towards the end, Rigondeaux went down, and people got excited. But it was such a shutout. In fact, Rigondeaux is always going down. I mean, just keeping it 100, guys. But he comes out and shuts you out. So it doesn't. Well, that's why he's running, honestly, because he knows he's susceptible to be knocked down because he is small. But when he's keeping it in range and fighting you on the outside and uses his jab and his footwork, dangerous.
Very.
Oh yeah. And real quick, man, on the last point, I just want to touch on some of the Cuban greats. I went back and I just studied some film, man, on some of the Cuban greats. Just real quick, I just want to run by them and see, let you know what my impressions were of these fighters. So we had Shakur Ramos, okay, and in my opinion, he's a fighter based on the film that I saw. I watched a couple fights, I saw a couple rounds. So, I'd like to think that I got a good idea of this style just based on a couple of like their classic fights that are available. And keep in mind, a lot of these fighters are all-time greats before Cuba went communist. So, a lot of like older fighters have, like we're talking like, early 60s is the latest in which they are able to kind of like get out of Cuba, so we're going to see a lot of black and white photos here, but just top five. Shakur Ramos, like I found him to always be in range, constantly engaging and punching. So definitely not what would be classified as the Cuban style, in my opinion. Kid Chocolate, I think that he most closely fits what people classify as the Cuban style stereotypically. And I think he fights on the inside. It's kind of like a hybrid between like a Hatton and like Andre Ward type of holding, but he can make it ugly. It's a very ugly clinching type style that he has. It's effective, very strong for his size, in my opinion. And then we got Luis Manuel Rodriguez. Man, this guy is nothing like the Cuban style. This guy completely controlled the ring, meaning the real estate. Think the way Mexicans like to do it. Front foot dominant, controlling the ring. And the aggressor's got a nice jab, doesn't hold, fights well on the inside. So definitely not the Cuban style. And then we've got Kid Galavan, aka the Cuban Hawk. Now he's a right-handed fighter and he fights in range. And besides fighting off he does fight off the back foot, but besides that, kind of moving somewhat on the back foot, he doesn't strike me as the stereotypical Cuban style. But he was most people regard him as the second best Cuban fighter of all time. And then we got Jose Montequia Napoles. Okay, now this guy's known for his smooth, rhythmic boxing style, and he's fluid, two-fisted with combinations, front foot. And I'll tell you, and you all can let me know what you think. I don't know if you guys watched any film on this dude, but like to me, he kind of fights like Canelo. I think he's got like Canelo's modern style of like applying that pressure while kind of being defensive, but having like better dimensions for his weight class with less power and explosiveness. Like that's what I saw. So, I mean, we could say that he fights Mexican style. Does anybody have anything on that before I move on to this next little subject?
I was going to go ahead and say he was your favorite. I can tell by your demeanor, your tone change, the smile. You talked about him the most. He's your favorite. He's
my favorite.
He's your favorite.
My favorite. Yeah, and the thing is, too, he was Mexico's favorite. He defected to Mexico, and he was beloved by the Mexicans, right? Just like the number 5. So, and also, people kind of categorically agree, and I'm no professional, okay? I'm just saying what I've read from other people, okay? Don't think that I'm a professional. But
you are, Chicano.
Well, I know a hell of a lot more than a lot of other people now about Cuban boxing. I'll tell you that.
There you go.
But he was beloved by Mexicans, and on top of that, Sugar Ramos was also beloved by Mexicans. So, to me, this idea of, these guys always coming to the United States, like that's interesting, but it kind of made me think that, sometimes, a Cuban boxer could consider going to Mexico if they could find a good trainer, like if they're trying to get some type of friendly style, and historically Mexico has shown that they can embrace fighters from another culture. Right. And, who knows, there's historical precedents for this across all boards. I want to give you some examples. Let me take a look here. So besides just the great Jose Montequia Napoles, and Sean, what does Montequia mean?
Butter.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I knew it. Like,
you say sure food, I got you, brother.
He's got it. Smooth, just like butter. All right. Don Francisco, right? Mexico loves Don Francisco from Sábado Gigante. The guy's Chilean, right? This is a bit before my era, but Luis Miguel El Sol de Mexico, right? The son of Mexico. Dude was born in Puerto Rico. All right. Although apparently he was marketed as a Mexican for a long time before he was kind of outed, but he was beloved. And I don't know if anybody else has anything to say on this. And then the last one is Angelique Boyer, telenovela superstar, French-born, Mexican national. I mean, and I could have found like a slew of beautiful women that are like, Chilean, Colombian, I mean, the Mexicans like them all. Well, if you think about it, it's easy to be a beautiful woman anywhere you go, So those are my thoughts. Does anybody have any final thoughts on that before we wrap it up on this subject?
Great slide, sir. No, man, great points. And I love the little historical look back in time at some great names and great fighters. And I love the fact that you said, that's an interesting point as far as them being embraced in Mexico, from them defecting not just to the U.S., but going to Mexico and making a name for themselves there. I think that's awesome. And, I love that.
Yeah, dude, it's something to think about because, I can't see any Cuban that's done a good job of like drawing as far as like coming to America, finding an American base. Like they should try to embrace it and it can be authentic. It doesn't have to be like where somebody like, kind of like makes a ploy. Like there's a lot to love about the Mexican culture, just like there's a lot to love about the Cuban culture. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, if somebody goes over there and is happy as a clam and they, they like the warmth, the language, and the love, we're two loving cultures, So, hey, man, it's just something for Cubans to consider. But I mean, they got a whole hell of a lot of considerations to make. But yeah, just something for them to think about because I can't see them making any money coming over here and linking up with an American trainer. Like it doesn't seem to generate money for them. But if they can somehow get that Mexican backing, I mean, it can work. I mean, look at Teofimo Lopez. I mean, he tries to embrace the Mexicans, and it's like, I mean, you look at me, Nopal, look at others. I mean, we all like Teofimo Lopez, so it does work.
Absolutely. Other than Pedro Diaz, has there been other trainers that came over that made it big and got, with professional fighters? He's the only one that comes to mind. I was kind of looking up online. I didn't see other. Pretty much Pedro, right?
Yeah, dude, there's that one cut man who also serves as a trainer. I wish Run PMC was here. He would know who it was, but he was the cut man for Teofimo's last fight.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I forget his name, but he's from Cuba.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. So I don't know that guy's name off the top of my head, but yeah, you're right. Because I almost did highlight Pedro Diaz. I was like, okay, well, and Pedro Diaz, he's He was the trainer for like 3 consecutive Olympics for Cuba, and then after he defected, he went to the Dominican Republic and was their trainer. And now he's kind of doing his own thing, right? But yeah, very good trainer. So I'm glad we gave him a shout out. Does anybody have anything to say before we move on to the controversial rescore?
No, great slides, man. Great presentation. It was really cool to see some of that history. And, to your point, these guys were, in their times, whether it was the 60s, 70s, or 80s, they weren't labeled, like you said, the Cuban style, which stood out to me a lot. That was very interesting. I liked it.
Thanks, man. And just as a reminder, the greatest Cuban fighter of all time fights like Canelo. I'm just saying. So let's mark that down, man. And let's go to our controversial rescore segment. We're going with Joel Casamayor versus Jose Armando Santa Cruz. Now, usually Run PMC breaks this fight down for us, but he was busy. But he does have his scorecard, which I'm going to give a little bit later. But this was for the lightweight lineal championship, 135 pounds, man. So we had a chance to take a look. And Sean, let's start with you today, bro. Let me know what you think about this fight and how'd you score it?
Okay. All right. So going into it, I know Casamayor, he was the belt holder for the WBC, the lineal, correct? So he was not impressive to me. He kind of went in there. He got caught early with a weird shot where it went to his elbow and it got kind of another knockdown. So they went ahead and scored it. I scored it as well because it got scored on the card. He did have moments. The thing about him is he's able to move in and out and he has good range. But the thing that I will say for me personally that got brought up, and I love your take after, we give our scores, is the whole holding thing. Like it got overwhelming and it really took me in and out of the fight. I did feel like he did have moments where he was controlling the fight, and I did like the way he was, approaching it. But at the same time, I felt like he wasn't engaging enough and taking enough chances to actually win rounds. So I felt like it was, I scored the fight actually 9-3. So I actually scored it 9-3 that against Casamayor. I had Jose Armando Santa Cruz winning the fight. And so that's
all right. So you classify this one as a robbery then on the Gringo meter.
Oh, absolutely. Like when I was watching, I was like, man, this is looking like a robbery on the Gringo meter. Like hopefully things will pick up. And it looked like it picked up. So let's give you a bit more context. Sorry, guys. So I actually had Casamayor when they said, I felt like he was picking it up in 6 and 7 and he did enough. I actually thought he had his best round in 7. In 10th, I thought he had a really good round. He was doing a lot more and less holding. Pretty much from 6 on, but he was actually getting outworked. And I thought when he allowed himself, in fact, he got through the ropes at one point, which looked kind of cool, but I mean, I'm like, he's not scoring right there. So the rounds I gave him was 6, 7, 10. And he just was out punched, outlanded, outperformed. And it was unfortunate because I thought that Jose Armando Santa Cruz was there to get hit and he was real awkward and gangly. And I know he's getting chewed out by his corner, which I loved because he was not really fighting well behind the 1-2 and he kept putting his guard down. But at the same time, I felt like, Casamayor was being lazy and he was holding the hold. And this is the point I was bringing up. Like he was holding the hold and not holding because he got hit or he got staggered or hurt. He was holding just for the sake of punching. I need to get away. If I can't get out of range, let me hold him, which, they were arguing on the telecast that should be taken away as far as a point. But, I was not taken away from that, but I was aware of that. I was just giving more rounds to Jose Armando Santa Cruz, because he was just landing more and he was just more effective and he was the aggressor. So that's my takeaway. If you're looking for a fight to entertain or to counter the whole argument of Cuban style boxing being entertaining or not, this is not the fight you want to watch, sir. At all.
No,
at all.
Hell, I'm just happy that Nopal is going to do it. Like, because I'm telling you, man, sometimes we get fatigued, and we sit there and we score some of these snoozers. Like the point is to score the most controversial fights, but it's not always fun. You know what I mean? And this one wasn't that fun, although it was slightly better than I was anticipating, because it's like, oh, Casamayor. Like, I mean, I remember some of his fights back then, and I've never gone back to watch one. I mean, I've never even gone back to watch Marquez knock him out. It's just not worth it to me personally. George, what'd you think about this fight, man, and how'd you score it?
Yeah, when hit play on the link immediately, maybe like into the second round, I'm like, this is gonna be a long 36 minutes. I mean, it was interesting, of course. Casamayor, it was getting overwhelming with the holding, and you see actually probably about the third round, you see it more excessively. He had his moments. I know we've mentioned sometimes the criteria of boxing. I have them right here: the effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, defense, hard and clean shots. I went back in between some of the rounds, and that's kind of how I based it off, because there were swing rounds where I'm like, well, okay, let me go back and rewatch these rounds again and see who hit some of these criteria of boxing. I felt Casamayor had some good moments where he did hit the criteria, where there was in the third round, which was a swing round, which I gave it to him because he hit the defense, and I felt like the ring generalship was there a little bit better, but not by much. It was tough to watch. Yes, the holding, and I enjoyed it too. I laughed a couple of times seeing the corners, especially Santa Cruz's corner, getting into his ass. Goosen, it was pretty cool to see him speak Spanish. I didn't know that Goosen, was bilingual. It was pretty cool. But as far as the scoring, I actually had it 7-5 Santa Cruz. Again, like I said, when I scored these rounds, there were some swing rounds, and the swing rounds, I was looking back to see who hit the criteria of the boxing. And on those swing rounds, I felt like Santa Cruz favored him a little bit more. But overall, man, I could see why you want to go back and score these fights, because they're not the easiest thing to do. And this one right here was one of them, man. And I knew I had my hands full. Like I said, a couple rounds where I had to rewatch it again, no volume, with volume. Put it on the tablet, put it on the TV, because when you watch it on your phone, it's a little hard because it's a lot smaller. But I had Santa Cruz 7-5.
Thank you, George. And do you classify it as a robbery?
I mean, they had Casamayor winning, and yes, it was a robbery.
All right, well, there you go. Thank you so much for that breakdown, man. Nopal, how'd you see this fight, brother?
Well, the first round, what an awkward knockdown. It's like he got pushed his elbow back or something like that, and he falls down. But nevertheless, I scored that a knockdown, I guess, because technically it was. And I ended up giving Casamayor rounds 7, 10, and 11. And I would classify it a robbery. I thought Santa Cruz, tried to do more work, and Casamayor was clinching a lot, and according to CompuBox, also Santa Cruz connected more. So that's how I had that 9-3, basically.
Nice. Thank you very much, Nopal, and we appreciate you hanging in there and scoring the bad ones for us, man. I'll owe you. I'm gonna get you like some kind of shirt or something.
No, Paul, how many times did you fall asleep? I fell asleep twice. I'll go ahead and admit it, twice. But I woke back up ready to score.
Man, it took me about 2 weeks to score this fight, man. That's how it was. I was looking forward to it at the beginning, and then after like 2 rounds, I was like, man, to be continued.
Man. Yeah,
I'm telling you, man. All right, well, another robbery, and you know what? It's a clean sweep. I also classified this one as a robbery. I had Santa Cruz winning 115 to 112. I gave Casamayor only rounds 5, 9, 11, and 12. And one of the things I'll say that that I agree with is that it was pretty frustrating watching this fight. Too much holding from Casamayor, in my opinion. Also, he was rusty. I thought that he started coming on a little bit more towards the end. The other thing, too, that I noticed that I thought Santa Cruz was doing fairly well that he didn't really stick to because he was getting an earful is like, I thought that when he took the opportunity to try to fight tall and long, like sometimes he would clip Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz's head would just, Casamayor, and Casamayor's head would go flinging back, and it's like, well, I think he could have used that time to kind of establish just a little bit of distance at times. Like, I don't know if he necessarily would have benefited, because I'm not sure if Casamayor could have adjusted, but like he could have stood to do that a little bit more, especially because he was so exhausted towards the end. But I mean, ultimately that didn't help Casamayor, because this was Santa Cruz's fight. Although I do think that the ring rust was wearing off as the rounds went by. And I thought Santa Cruz was starting to close in and really get a good rhythm down towards the end. But the commentators just, they literally started talking about whatever else. Like, I've never seen that old HBO commentary just like stop talking about what was going on in the ring and just talk about any old thing. I must have heard, Juan Baby Bull Diaz, he's the guy we want to say. I must have heard a reference to him like 6-8 times, and he was the hot guy, and they were excited about the way Juan Diaz, the Baby Bull, delivers punches in bunches. And so, I mean, they were like, oh yeah, Casamayor, he's the lineal champ, but they were phrasing things that were interesting. It's almost like it was kind of a hit job on Casamayor, in my opinion. And I do think that Santa Cruz, although he won this fight, like, I didn't necessarily see anything special out of him. Like, to me, it was a clear robbery, but I mean, I'm not like super outraged. I don't know how much further he would have gone, in my opinion. Although Casamayor makes things ugly. I'm not going to go back and study Jose Armando Santa Cruz, but he looked a bit gassed to me, in my opinion. Maybe he, obviously Leo's the better brother, but this was definitely a robbery. And so now that we're done breaking it down, I also have to agree. It was cool seeing Joe Goosen saying like, oh, tú sabes, and just talking in Spanish, totally cool, man. The more I see of Joe Goosen, the more I like him, back in those older fights when he's just, marching his fighters forward, he's talking like, I love his corner work, especially like the older Goosen. Like and also like his commentary too. But yeah, man, does anybody have any final thoughts on this? Like, we can open it up a bit if anybody wants to talk any more about this particular fight.
Yeah, just the fact that, normally we talk about how it was a distraction, but I'd actually say the commentary helped me during this fight from the standpoint of, I was like, it made me, I forgot, like during the prime, because that was the prime of Baby Bull Diaz. It was like 2006 or 2008, because he held the belt during that time, 2007 to 2008. He was the man, and, showing love to the H channel, but they were literally talking about Baby Bull Diaz like he was fighting next. Like, they were on his undercard. They were talking about him like so much. So it was I didn't realize. I know that Chicano, you're high on Baby Bull Diaz, but I didn't realize he was that hot at that time. I mean, they were talking about him like he was just the man. Like he was just unbeatable. I didn't see him that way, but
neither did I. Like, I was more of a Marquez fan, although I do love the Diaz Marquez fights, but at the time, like, people don't like, I think people forget that he was and whether or not the list looks good now, like, he was a top 10 pound for pound fighter back in the day. I didn't necessarily see that hype either, although he was kind of exciting. It's never crossed my mind, but I remember people thinking that Paulie beat Juan Baby Bull Diaz. I've never seen that on any of the lists that I looked up as far as like controversial fights, but I remember people were outraged about that one. Supposedly, I didn't necessarily see it in my mind. Like, thinking back, like, I didn't necessarily see it as a robbery. But I mean, he's not necessarily like a knockout artist, but he was exciting to watch. The guy went in there, threw punches and bunches.
No, so that stood out to me, and again, it also stood out just the fact that when I see a fighter fight that bad, that's a champion, that's a respected name, immediately I have to cleanse my palate and I have to watch a better performance. So, like, what I did to reward myself, I went back, even though you said you didn't watch it, I went back and watched Marquez versus Casamayor. It's like a different guy, way better. Even though he got knocked out, that Casamayor, that version would have destroyed Jose Armando Santa Cruz. Like, he didn't hold once. Even when he got hurt, he didn't hold. So I'm not sure what happened. I mean, old age, I guess. Father Time wins again. But that was my takeaways.
Yeah,
you know what happened? Juan Manuel Marquez happened, bro.
Better recognize, yeah.
That's right. But you know what, though? A great observation. Maybe I will go back and watch that fight. But
good.
I do. Maybe I will, man, because like, I do appreciate, like, the style
Great
clashes,
suggestion.
and
Thank you.
dude,
reward yourself, Chicano.
I know,
Reward
right?
yourself.
Keep a bad
Yourself.
taste out of my
Yourself.
mouth. I think that I will, man.
Awesome. Other than that, man, good stuff. But I'm glad that one's off the books. George, please do not score that on your show, please. Don't do it.
I already did the dirty work.
Well, hey, George,
George.
we should show you our list because, I went around, dude, and I went to like websites. I went around to like Reddit, just like what do people think are the most controversial fights of all time. And, we've put together a pretty nice little list. We'll upgrade the image and we'll give it to you so you can take a look, maybe takes away. And also, people also remember fights a specific way in their minds. And sometimes they just, for their own clarification, whether the world sees it or not, thinks there was a robbery,
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, it was great having your take on this. And for next week, man, I wanted to highlight like what's going on as a little bit of a preview for what's going on next week. We've got Sergio Martinez is making a return, you guys, against McGowan. Actually, he's had a return. He's had like 4 to 5 consecutive wins. He's fighting in Madrid, Spain on the 27th of January. And since he's fighting, I think it's pretty interesting because it's not really being covered, but like his win-loss ratio is still pretty damn good. And you know what? This guy was one of the better super welterweights, was one of the better middleweights in recent history. I mean, in my opinion, he's worth going back and taking a look at. So I think that we should go back and take a look at Sergio Martinez versus Kermit Cintron. A lot of people classify this one as a blatant robbery. On top of that, Kermit Cintron's piping up these days saying that he wants a rematch with Sergio Martinez 11 years later, some unfinished business, right? So we're going to take a look at this one.
Whoa.
Does anybody remember anything off the top of their head about this particular fight?
I do not.
I don't remember feeling like it was a robbery, but hey, that's why we do this. Let's get it.
That's right. I mean, that's why we do it. I don't necessarily remember it as being a robbery either, but I have a hard time believing that Kermit Cintron could earn a draw against like a pretty evolved Sergio Martinez. Like he came off a huge string of wins. Like he lost to Margarito pretty early on, and then there's like 20 wins, and then he gets a draw, and then he goes on to fight Paul Williams. And then he goes on to, to do that and then kind of go on to be a great middleweight. But I mean, this is kind of like the very tail end of his super welterweight run, so like, I'd be curious to see, like it's being listed a lot. Like I said, I don't remember it that way. But dude, he was a bad man at 154. And I remember a time when people were saying, hey, Floyd Mayweather wants no parts of Sergio Martinez. I remember that back in the day. Yeah, there was an era, and it's like, we weren't sitting there going like, oh, Floyd, you want a belt against De La Hoya? You need to go up and fight the top guy right now. We're going to lose our minds, right? For some reason, I don't remember that, but you know how it is. A lot of double standards, and there's nobody to hold these double standards to. But it would be a pleasure to go back to see Maravilla Martinez. On top of that, too, I've been kind of talking about this Cuban style, which maybe I like sometimes, maybe I don't like. But I mean, Sergio Martinez, southpaw, slick, good foot movement, maybe fights with his hands down. I mean, does he come in and out? Like, does he stay out of range too long? Like, I'll be curious to go back and look and see if I feel that way. Like, I didn't see those problems at all. Like in the only recent fights that I've seen with Sergio Martinez would be his fights against Paul Williams, and there was no problem there because those were wars. Also in the Kelly Pavlik fight, I mean, that was a pure clinic, so I mean, he wasn't really doing it like that, but I'll be curious to see what kind of style he's implementing at the very tail end of his 154-pound run.
Yeah, maybe he has his hands up a little bit more here. I haven't really seen, any of the highlights of his recent fights. I know he's been winning. I've been reading that, yes. Man, he did have a great, awesome early career at 154, and then I think the fight, of course, that sticks out to everybody is the Paul Williams and the Chavez Jr. That 12th round was absolutely nuts, man. I remember that.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was a time when he was on top, like Triple G was still coming on. But I mean, if you're kind of new to boxing and you don't know, like this was the guy before Triple G started coming on, and then he lost. He was the lineal champ, like he was the lineal champ right after being Pavlik. Pavlik did lose to Hopkins, but that was at a higher weight class. So this is a lineal. This is a lineage that goes from Bernard Hopkins all the way down to Canelo. It ends at Canelo because he lost. Sergio Martinez lost to Cotto, who lost to Canelo. But I mean, he's got a great history. He was just running through people, just dismantling people. So it's going to be a pleasure for us to go back, at least in my opinion, to go back and watch this fight. It's got to be more impressive than the Santa Cruz Casamayor fight, in my opinion.
Oh, without even trying, bro.
I was going to say there was some controversy there, not controversy, but with how they just made Chavez Jr. the 160-pound champ, when he was the lineal. And that was, there's a lot of things with Martinez's career that you'd have to go back and watch. But, there was a lot. He didn't get treated very fairly with the sanctioning bodies, At one point, he was like 154 champ, and, he made an easy transition into 160. So he technically held both belts simultaneously, and they wanted him to choose a division, because they weren't going to let him hold them both. And I think he chose middleweight. And then he had a problem because they stripped them. I don't know why the WBC stripped them, but they turn around and give it to Chavez, which was crazy, and that's why they had their fight. And Chavez basically got shut out in that fight. We all know that. And he might have won one round, but I mean, I estimate that Chavez was like 185, 190 pounds in there fighting against Sergio Martinez. So, crazy history there.
Yeah, and Freddie Roach was training Chavez Jr. at the time too, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
When he
That's
took him
right.
on.
And then the infamous eating cereal in pink underwear,
Yeah, it was
you know what? I mean, I'm glad we're at least, I don't want to like derail us, and we could talk more about Maravilla next week, because you know what? Like he deserves to have some attention. Like he's just not getting talked about that much, and it's like it wasn't that long ago that he was the man in a couple of divisions, and he had a very, very good run, and he didn't really have too many unanswered questions, in my opinion, outside of maybe not fighting Triple G. But Triple G wasn't necessarily quite the guy to see. He was kind of like the hype that was coming on. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be a pleasure to go back and watch him next week. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Great show. Glad to have you on, George, man. It was awesome. It was an honor, man. And always an honor to talk to Chicano Nopal, man. And please let me come back. No.
Bro, you're one of the panelists. You need to quit playing. And George, if you have a moment, man, please feel free to drop your link. You guys can catch George on his off the ropes boxing and MMA, and he's got a colleague. George, what's your homie's name? I forget.
His name is Julian Romero. Yeah, we came into this together. Well, we met each other in a barbershop. So I used to cut hair for about 10 years, and typical barbershop boxing talk, back and forth. And he was a guy like we'd agree to disagree. And one day I just reached out to him like, look, man, you know what? Like we talk a lot of boxing. Let's just take it on and see where it goes. And we've been doing this since September, maybe September. Yeah, about September we started this. Actually started off on Anchor. There's a free app that you do on podcasts. And then I looked into YouTube, and like they said, with YouTube, you have to at least have 1,000 followers. But then I started seeing different routes. There's the StreamYard, there was Zoom, but I just felt like StreamYard was the easiest one, and we jumped on it, man. I don't think we've done a podcast episode for Anchor yet. It's pretty much been strictly StreamYard to YouTube. And
Nice,
again, like I said, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. It was a pretty cool fight to score, but at the same time, it was nails to the chalkboard, and I could see why it was picked. It was fun. I enjoyed it, guys.
You earned your stripes, man. It goes that way. There's some much funner fights, and it's up to you how long you want to do it, man. It's been a grind, but the El Chile Cruz is going to finish it off strong, leading up to the Cinco de Mayo weekend, man. We're going to have a grand finale with Canelo versus Triple G 1 and 2. So, those are going to be some hot topics, man. So, but in the meantime, we're going to finish them off, and we still got some real good ones. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. Knocked Out by Kenny jumped in, Mad Dog H, Team Batman Boxing. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week. This is the El Chile Crew.